On behalf of the resident monks here in the temple, it is my duty to express our sincere thanks and gratitude for all our members and the devotees who have supported us in various ways, providing our requisites and attending to various activities, extending your kindness and cooperation in every respect. So my New Year message is, try to be good and try to do good. For 1988, you try and see. Try to be good and try to do good. You may experience a lot of difficulties. Now let us see what the Buddha has said. When you refer to Dhammapada, you will come across these sayings of the Buddha. Susukhang vata jivama verinesu averino. Verinesu manussesu viharama averino. It's a very practical and meaningful and useful. The Buddha says, let us live happily amongst all those who hate, without joining with them, without harboring hatred. Can you do that? Let us live happily amongst those who hate, without joining with them or without harboring hatred. If we can do that, we can live happily. So when we are going to do good deeds, when we are trying to be good, we always experience so many problems and disturbances. That is why the Buddha says, you try your best to maintain your understanding, your patience. Then the disturbances that come from outside, you can ignore very easily. You can maintain healthy mind, although there are a lot of disturbances. You cannot stop them. It is impossible. You cannot say how to be good since all the others disturb us. That is not the religious way of life. The meaning of religion is, when we analyze, there are three periods for us to experience happiness and peace. If we think the purpose of religion is for us to find something for our worldly life, for our comfortable and pleasurable life or prosperous life, that is not the main purpose of religion, because there are so many other sources for us to experience all the worldly material gain. Religions try to contribute something which other sources cannot do. But many people narrow the real essence or the real meaning of religion by talking only about worldly life, material gain, prosperity. You narrow the real meaning of religion. Of course, religion teaches us how to lead a peaceful life without disturbing others. If you disturb others, it is impossible for you to lead a peaceful life, because your mind knows what you are doing. You cannot do anything against your mind. Your mind knows everything what you do, whether good or bad. You can bluff everybody in this world, but you cannot bluff your own mind. So, religion is important for us to live peacefully as long as we live. But we must know how to adjust our way of life by maintaining our human dignity, by giving due credit to our human intelligence. So we should not abuse our human intelligence. We have intelligence, but so many other evil forces, selfishness and cunningness, clouded, deluded the purity of the mind. So religion tells us how to get rid of these disturbances which blindfold us. Because of these weaknesses, we won't be able to justify, we won't be able to find out reality in anything. We always try to follow the shadow or mirage, not knowing the real nature of this existence. So, definitely we can lead a peaceful life if we try to adjust our way of life by knowing our own weaknesses. We can see others' weaknesses. We can criticize and condemn and accuse others. But individually, we are reluctant to admit our own weaknesses. Always our human egoism interrupts our own mind and doesn't allow for us to admit our own weakness. That is why always after committing even wicked thing, cruel thing in this world, we try to justify. That is our mistake. Unless and until we admit our own weaknesses, we won't be able to correct ourselves. That is the first thing we have to learn. Then, life is not limited only for this particular life. This is not the first and the last life. Then we have to think about the next life. Again, religion tells us how to mold our next existence. Therefore again, the Buddha says in Dhammapada, Idha nandati, pecca nandati, kata punyo, ubhayatta nandati. Those who lead a righteous way of life, those who do some service to others, those who perform some meritorious deeds, Idha nandati, enjoy happiness here in this world. Peccanandati, hereafter also, not only within this lifetime. That means the life which is molded, conditions according to our merits that we have accrued, pave the way for us to maintain happy and peaceful life hereafter. Many people do not know how to adjust their life to experience real peace and happiness in the next life. They believe simply by praying to some supernatural powers or Buddhas or God or Bodhisattvas that they will be able to experience very peaceful and happy life. But according to the Buddha, that is not the only method that may give some sort of satisfaction or confidence, create hopes, but nobody knows how far these hopes and confidence really work. But if we maintain our own happiness in our mind, there is no doubts whatsoever. During this lifetime, we experience various kinds of worldly happiness. But all these happiness we can maintain up to our last breath. We cannot carry forward. We cannot carry this happiness into our next world. Please remember this. Whatever you have, whatever name or publicity you have, whatever reputation you have created, if there is no real happiness in your mind, it is impossible for us to experience this happiness in the next life. Then, what is that which gives real happiness? While we are living here in this world, we can maintain confidence and happiness by thinking about our next life. What is this? If our mind knows that we have not violated, we have not disturbed, we have not committed evil or cruel or wicked deeds, that happiness is enough for us to gain confidence while we are living here, to get some sort of satisfaction that our next life never become a miserable one, and never rebirth take place in any of those unfortunate states. Otherwise, life is uncertain. So the religion points out or teaches us how to mold our next life. Just now I told you we cannot mold our next life simply by praying to anybody or worshipping to anybody without cultivating some sort of virtues in our mind and without maintaining our human dignity. You can understand this word. It's a very meaningful word, human dignity. Again, next life is not the final goal. Remember this. If you are going to limit your belief that you have to lead only this life and hereafter, that means you have not learned how these life process and mental process really work. They are not working according to your wish if you have not prepared. You can wish, you can pray, you can believe anything, but these things never work if you have not prepared for that. So belief are immaterial for that. Whether you believe or not, existence, either pleasurable or miserable, life is depend on our way of life, not according to our belief. Please remember this. Your belief are only imagination. Your belief can become daydreams. You can say, I believe this, I believe that. That is only imagination. When you analyze your belief, there is nothing inside, shallow. Even without believing in anything, if you cultivate your way of life, if you know how to maintain healthy mind, peaceful mind, that mental attitude and those mental process condition your next existence. There is nobody to handle this. Remember, the Buddha is not coming to handle this. The God is not coming to handle this. Your own mental process, condition another existence. And this will continue life after life. That is called wheel of existence. This is the last stage. Now we have gone through two stages, this life and the next life. But that is not the end, because existence again take place. Because in the next life, we are not going to keep quiet. We spend what we have accumulated within this lifetime in the next birth. And we pay for all the bad deeds what we have done within this lifetime. So while leading that way of life, again we accumulate good and bad deeds, good and bad karmas in the next life. Then condition another one. That is how the mental process continues. No one can stop this. Your beliefs are not important. You can say, I don't believe that. It doesn't matter. Then what is the aim? The ultimate aim of our life? Or what religion can contribute for us to find out the ultimate aim or the end of our suffering, the end of our unsatisfactoriness, end of our grumbling. Whatever we have, we always grumble. We never maintain satisfaction in our life. Then what is the solution? The solution is, according to the Buddha, as long as we exist within this cycle of birth and death, repeated birth and death, we never experience complete satisfaction in our life in any form, whether in human forms or devas or God or Brahmas or any other supernatural living beings. All these living beings are subject to the universal law of anicca, dukkha, anatta. No one is free from these three. Now let us take the religious teacher who has revealed this truth to us. He says, his life also subject to this universal law. No one is exempted. The Buddha's life, the Buddha's body, also impermanent, then started to decay and had to suffer from various sicknesses. That is what he says. Whether we are good or bad, whether we are religious or not, whether we are pure or not, our physical body is not free from the universal law of impermanence. Because body is not the life. Life is one thing, body is another thing. We take this as life. This is not the life. This is a shelter. This is a house for that life to settle down. Life is a current, an energy. So when the formations of this, a structure or the house or the shelter, are started to decay and collapse, the life that which exists here shift over. then occupy another house. After staying there for some time, again that house also starts to decay and collapse, then shift over to another house. That is how existence takes place again and again. Where is the end of it? Forever you have to build new houses. Forever you have to experience all the result or the effects of good and bad deeds that you have committed, you have performed, life after life. These are known as sanskara. Our sanskaras remain. Then we spend certain amount and the remainder we carry forward for the next life. Again, within that lifetime, we accumulate some more. Now, when you compare your way of life with others, actually, you can understand. You are not unfortunate human being. You are very lucky people. Compare with others. We know you always grumble. You can stop your grumbling if you can consider and survey how many people are blind in this world, how many millions, how many people are mad, crippled, deaf, dumb. But you are very normal. So do you think you are not very fortunate? Again, how many millions of human beings are dying in many parts of the world? Starving and dying, millions. But how many people are dying here without food in this country? You have more than enough food, although you grumble. How many millions and billions of human beings are living in this world who cannot find out even a piece of cloth to cover their nakedness? When you visit certain countries, you can see. And here in this country, every year, you bring your old clothing and dump here in this temple, saying these are old clothing. Actually, they are not old clothing. To you, they are out of date, out of fashion. Well, when we send these old clothing to another country, to them, they are real gold. They have never seen such valuable clothing in their life, and still you grumble. How many millions of others are living the pavement, roadside, day and night, for generations, not only short period. Their birth, marriage, death, everything takes place at the pavement, on the roadside, day and night. During the winter, during the rain, they have to spend there, no shelter for them, under certain trees, if not without even any tree. So do you think you are not fortunate? But there are some others who really enjoy their life. When you compare your way of life with them, then you can understand they are more fortunate. But there are many other things you have to consider. Those who are very rich, you consider they are very fortunate. But you do not know actually they are leading a very miserable life. Uncertainty in their life, fear of death. These are the strongest enemies in our mind, and they are suffering from that sickness. If you are not very rich, you are very lucky. Because you can sleep without fear. You can go out without fear. That is called contentment. That contentment gives you confidence, and others also never disturb you. And when you develop this contentment, you can avoid so many other mental disturbances. If there is contentment, you never develop jealousy. You never develop hatred, or you don't create enemies. If you have contentment, you never disturb others. You never bluff others. See how lucky you are if you are contented. Don't try to be very rich, very dangerous. You know, people are crazy to be rich. And in the end, they won't be able to die also peacefully. They have thousands of worries. But the contented man can welcome the death when the time comes, because no worries in the mind. Then can condition the next life without any difficulty to be a peaceful life. So one day, when we continue our way of life, then we will be able to reach the final goal. What is this final goal? It is not paradise. It is not heaven. It is not Brahma world. There is no world in any part of the universe or anywhere that existence or the life or anything that can remain without changing. If there is anything to remain there, that thing is changeable. If you think there is something, remember it is a dream. You maintain such belief just to console your craving, your desire, your anxiety. So if you try to console your anxiety by creating such belief, you miss the target. By analyzing and realizing reality or the real nature of existence, you will be able to find out. If you say that final goal is this or that, then you create your own imagination. As soon as we use the word nirvana, that you can go to nirvana, then at once you create nirvanic paradise in your mind. You create that according to your craving. This is the way you analyze. You grasp this concept or this belief by using worldly concept, worldly words and worldly belief. We analyze. We have to go beyond this if we really want to get rid of worldly suffering. No one can stop our worldly suffering by providing more and more worldly material things, by experiencing or indulging our senses. The more we supply, the more we increase our craving. This is the nature of craving. Therefore, there is no contented man in this world who try to experience this happiness by providing more and more things. But by reducing and reducing and reducing, they experience more peace and more happiness and contentment. These are the three stages. The religion we have to use only for this period, for this life and hereafter, and in the end to find out the aim or the final goal of our life. Otherwise, this life is going on floating here and there without any aim, without any object, without any purpose. So we perform all these religious activities by
Now, as you know, fifth precept is on intoxicants. That is to say, I try to abstain from distilled and fermented intoxicants, which are the occasion of carelessness. In Pali, it reads as Sura Miraya Matja Pamadatana Varamani Skapadang Samadhyami. So now what actually Sura Miraya means? It means Sura means a kind of fermented liquor. That means to say you have, say, a rice where after some fermentation it turns to become a kind of a liquor. And if you were to further distill it, then it becomes more refined and pure. Then it becomes Miraya. Miraya is already what we call concentrates, a very high level of alcohol. And Sura Miraya also covers things like drugs. Drugs, for example, like cocaine, hashish, marijuana, ganja, and other types of drugs, which at present now you see all over our towns. We have this dada, najis dada, which means to say it is the waste or the destruction of our human values. So, at the moment when this problem is very prevalent among youths, this precept is very meaningful among Buddhists. So as a Buddhist, or as a practicing Buddhist, we have this restriction, and we protect ourselves from this drug abuse. Now, intoxicants, it means, for example, like hard liquor, brandy, whiskey, gin, vodka, you name it, and also inclusive beer. Beer, normal beer, where people say only sik liang only lah, jia liang lah. Not so bad after all. And this falls under this category. All this intake of intoxications falls under this category because if consumed in large amounts, it will give you heedlessness. That means you are not aware of what you are doing. You lost your reasoning power. For example, a straight line, you say that you are walking on a straight line, but actually you are walking zigzag. So you are reasoning very hard to say that you are walking on a straight line, but it's actually not a straight line. So your reasoning power is no longer there. And before we come to the breaking of this precept, for example, that you have already undertaken a precept, Sura Miraya, that means you will try to abstain. This one, try to abstain. This is the controversy that governs a lot of people in our everyday life, because we say that we are businessmen, we are what we call social people, so we need to drink with friends. We need to become what we call sociable. And when you go to a wedding dinner, when you go to a party, when you go to a gathering, people will say, come, let's have a drink. Then you say, orange squash, please. They say, what? Orange squash? No. If you are a man, then you must drink. It's the same thing as if you are a man, you must smoke. So eventually you say, okay, a little bit. After all, I'm a social drinker. I drink a little bit only. Sikit-sikit. Lama-lama jadi bukit. So you say, okay, I'll drink a bit. And eventually you become what we call a social drinker. You drink on occasions. You drink when what we call you are entertaining some friends, just as a casual. Then you say, well, that little bit is alright, because after that I can still know who am I. After that I can still recognize people and understand what I'm doing. And most of us are governed by this type of controversy, because we tend to have this type of social life that we live, because we are, number one, not renounced. We have not renounced the facts of what we call the ways of life as a layman. Therefore we say we drink a little. And there are other occasions when we say that, you get certain kind of cough, called ling sao, cold cough. So somebody suggested that, drink a little bit of brandy and the cough will go away. Supposedly it works. It works because after drinking you feel kind of a warm inside, and eventually you get what we call a cure. And there are also occasions when the weather becomes cold. Then you say, okay, I drink a bit of brandy to keep warm. That's why we find that people in the cold countries, they do take this liquor, not with the purpose of intoxication, but with the purpose of keeping warm. And of course there are occasions like say wedding. Okay, on your wedding night, you know, it is an occasion that you should be happy and you should forget the night. But you must not be aware of the night, you must be drunk. So everybody is trying to push it to you. And you say, no, I don't drink. Then he says, not stopping. So he says, okay, only on this occasion and not other occasions. So there are many occasions where we drink a little. But we say that the moment you start tasting, the moment you start having your first drink, that will lead to a second. The moment you have a second, then you have a third. And there's this famous Tibetan saying that says, when a man takes a bottle, then a bottle takes a bottle. Finally, the bottle takes the man. So eventually you will succumb. But that depends again on reasoning powers. That depends again on willpower. That depends on determination and also commitment to practice. And whether we are going to practice hard or whether we practice a little. You cannot say that a person who drinks, a Buddhist, who happens to be a social drinker, we condemn him and say he has broken his precepts. Because to break a precept, there are 5 conditions to be fulfilled. The first condition is that that drink which you are taking is either an intoxication drink or drugs. You are aware of it. The second condition is you are aware of it, that it is liquor. You have the desire to drink it. Alright, you have the desire to drink it. And thirdly, you have the act of enjoying or drinking it. You must be enjoying it as a liquor, with the awareness that it is a liquor. And finally, you go intoxicated. You become heedless. You become marble. So, if these 4 conditions are satisfied, then we are said to have broken the 5th precept. But when you say that you have broken the 5th precept, we say that you are breaking in total, 100%. You are supposed to totally abstain, totally avoid, 100% avoid. But you have broken by following these 4. By virtue of that, then you will suffer the maximum vipaka or effects of breaking a precept. But there are occasions when you say, well, I drink a little bit, you know. These are occasions where the vipaka are there. You cannot escape from them, but your results are less severe. Not severe in the sense that you don't suffer from the consequences so badly as you drink with the purpose of intoxication. That means you want to intoxicate yourself. For some of us, when we feel that we are very tired of living, we are very depressed, then we take to the bottle. We drink in order to drown our sorrows, in order to forget our problems. When with that intention and that desire, that purpose, then we have broken the precept 100%. But as an occasional drinker, for example, you take a little bit of beer, not with the purpose of intoxication, but with the purpose of drinking, one, for medicinal purposes. Medicinal purposes in the sense that you are trying to keep cool. Now sometimes people say that when you are feeling very, very warm, you take a little bit of beer, then you get cool. Then brandy, where a woman after delivering is always encouraged to take lots of brandy. But a lot of people are against that. But then we ask all our mothers and our grandmothers, those who took a lot of brandy when they were after their delivery, you find that they become very healthy when they are old. So it does give some medicinal effects. And sometimes when we have what we call certain broth, we go and cook certain broth, we tend to put a little bit of brandy inside to make the medicine more effective. When you have certain chicken to boil and so on, and certain medicinal herbs, then you add in a little bit of brandy. And again, that gives certain kind of medicinal values. That is not with the purpose of intoxication. That is with the purpose of medicinal values. And by virtue of doing that, of course you are creating, you have got the percent, but the effects are not that strong. So now we come back to the question is that we understand that we should try to avoid. The more we avoid, the more results, good results we get. The less we avoid, the less results we will get. So it depends on individuals. Some individuals, after becoming very committed, after becoming very aware of the ills of intoxication and the benefits of practicing and the 5 precepts, they will avoid as much as they can. When a friend comes to offer them, says, come, let's have a drink. No, I prefer Coca-Cola. So please give me a Coca-Cola. Then somebody will say, do you know Coca-Cola also got drug? Coca-Cola also, got the Coca plants is a drug itself. So actually everything we take is drugs. But the thing is, we are now reducing slowly to a lower level of liquor. And eventually, finally, we only drink plain water. So eventually what we are trying to do is, we are trying to reduce our attachment to hard liquor. And eventually, one fine day, we totally avoid. We need not be a monk, we need not be a renounced person to avoid liquor. As an ordinary person, we can avoid liquor. But that has to have a lot of commitment. And it will come to a day when we slowly reduce, slowly abstain. Bit by bit, eventually, it will be a day when we will not drink again. We will not take any more intoxicants. We will not take any more drugs. And finally, we said that we are practicing the 5 precepts to the highest degree. But meanwhile, we must not go around and say that if a person were to drink and he happens to be a Buddhist, then we condemn him. We say that he is wrong. He is not right. But then we must say that the level of practice depends on the commitment of a person and depends on the results that he wants to have. If he wants to have more benefits and more results, then he practices more, he abstains more. But if he wants to have less results and less benefits, then he practices less. So it is each and everyone's individual ability and capabilities. So we cannot say that he is wrong, you are right, we are right, he is wrong. So we talk about the evils of drinking. Intoxicants, of course, definitely, sometimes we can say it's actually a waste of money. After drinking and drinking and drinking, for those who have become what we call alcoholics, they need to drink. And drinking is not free, it's very expensive, especially with the heavy taxes that is slapped onto these drinks. It becomes a very expensive affair. And eventually most of their money goes into this area. Now, we have known of one occasion when we were, say, eating in a coffee shop and there was this man who comes to beg for money. And then, after looking at him, you find that very sympathized with him. You decide to give him a certain amount of money and says, here, go and buy some food. After taking hold of that money, straight away he ordered 1 bottle of Guinness Stout, please, from the same coffee shop. So, you find that these alcoholics, they will have to depend on this. Without the drink, they feel shivery. Without the drink, they feel weak. Without the drinks, they feel very, what we call, uncertain. So they need this. It's the same thing as a person who needs a cigarette to keep themselves calm, keep themselves in good thoughts. This is what we call a stimulant. So eventually, it is a waste of money. This money was given to him to be used for food, but instead it was spent on intoxicants. And often than not, you find that a family gets problems because one of their parents is a drinker. Quarrels will arise. You will get quarrels, and there will be some beating around, and there will be some scolding. And sometimes when you scold, you say out certain things which you actually did not mean to do, and you hurt the other party very bad. So it leads to a lot of trouble, a lot of problems. And that's the reason why the Buddha advises that if we want to avoid this problem, then avoid from this liquor drinking. It's harmful to one's health. Of course, earlier I said it was a medicinal drink. But when consumed in large amount, it becomes very taxing. I've known of one colleague of mine who drinks a bottle of brandy a night. You go to the back of his house, he actually sells brandy bottles. Big assortment of brandy bottles. In the end, he was warded in the hospital with a liver ailment because brandy attacks the liver very badly. And he has to suffer, and he nearly died. After that, he says, I will never drink again. Swear. That was 3 years ago. Now, he's still drinking. So a lot of willpower and determination is never there. This is the problem. Eventually, when you become addicted, it's very difficult to cut off. So the question the Buddha asks is that whether you can start by saying no. If you can say no, then eventually that first drink does not arise. Then you won't have the problem at the end of the project, at the end of the road. It is a source of disgrace. Disgrace in the sense that if you have an alcoholic father, if you have an alcoholic mother, and everybody starts talking about it, you feel that your family is being destroyed. You feel that your family is gone. And not only your father and your mother, eventually we are going to be a father and a mother. And if we happen to be drinker again, our children will be disgraced. And so on, and it will lead in a chain of reaction. So rather than have this disgrace, why not we avoid it? Thirdly, it leads to certain actions which we do not mean to. We become what we call a fool in front of others. We may think that we are very clever, but other people are actually making fun of us. So this reduces our human dignity. We become like a plaything for others because you can drink. So people like to challenge you. People like to, push you. In fact, they are actually trying to ridicule you. So that when you are drunk, you can tell them very nice stories. Lastly, it weakens a power of reasoning. You will never be able to reason well. In fact, the mind will not be clear. The mind will not be strong. And as a Buddhist, our power of reasoning must be kept at the most alert or mindful level. Because we are told that the mind leads to a lot of things, a lot of evil, and the mind can also do a lot of wonderful things and good. So it is the mind that is most important that we must take care of. And this intoxicant attacks the root and the very root of our human values. That is the mind. The rest are not so what we call serious. Now, you do hear of a story of a person who, what we call, tries to abstain from precepts. And there was this guy who says that he abstained from all precepts, right? And he practices abstain from 4 precepts and practice only 1. That is abstain from killing. Right? Abstain from killing, and he, what we call, practices, breaks the rest of the 4. That is, he does lying, he does stealing, he does sexual misconduct, and he drinks. But he doesn't kill. Then there's another one who abstains from stealing but commits the other four. Then another one, sexual misconduct, and he commits the other four. And another one, abstain from lying, but he commits the other four. And finally you come to a person who have what we call intoxicants. Now if a person were to have intoxicants, he breaks all five. Because when he is a drunk, then he will be what we call commits killing without him aware of it. He will commit stealing, he will commit sexual misconduct, and finally he will commit what we call lying. So if the last precept is not kept, then it breaks all five. But other precepts you can actually avoid by practicing all four and committing one, committing two, committing three. But if you avoid practicing the last one, then you actually break all five. So the most important precept is actually the fifth precept as an ordinary lay Buddhist. But we are not saying that from today onwards you cannot take a sip. Cannot take a sip, but then you must be aware of the consequences. As a Buddhist, we are individuals. As a Buddhist, we are responsible for our own individual actions. No one can say that you are right or wrong. It is you who will eventually have to face the benefits or the consequence. If you avoid drinking, then you will reap the benefits of leading a good, reasonable way of life. But if you do not avoid drinking, then it leads to a lot of other problems. And that is the reason why the Buddha always encourages us to try and avoid and abstain from taking of intoxicants. Of course, now we are only talking about the social part of drinking, but we must look at the aspects of drugs. At the moment, of course, in the last year and in this coming year, the government has placed very heavy emphasis on drug abuse. And eventually, a Buddhist community has been encouraged to try and highlight this point. And by practicing the five precepts, if we are very strong in it, this drug abuse never arises in the Buddhist community. So drugs, it can also mean small things like ganja, heroin, and this problem, although we do not see it very clearly, but it is very prevalent. And if you look around in town, you do find a lot of corners, a lot of hideouts where these people resort to such activities. And as a Buddhist, we have to be encouraged not to be involved in it. Of course, that type of consequences are far more serious, very much more serious than these consequences of taking intoxicants. So with that, I end this morning's presentation on the fifth precept. Do you have any questions pertaining to this? And if you do not have any questions pertaining to this, then we will open it for open discussions. All tears and sorrow crowns and weary seas, for truth and joy thy glorious teaching bring. I'll take my refuge in the glorious Lord, no other shelter shall I need. I take my refuge in the law and hunger, which freedom brings and life forevermore. Which freedom brings and life for they must save and die. And all your path is bright, soon on the ground we find. For all the world does blue, there comes a midnight wind. So that seeks for peace within this world lost pride. For many of men's wounds below in this our mortal life. And when our sins delight, and our of bliss we find, of love that blows a midnight wind. It's true that mortal life is tough and quickly passes by, but still abides that ancient gleam of truth that cannot die. Soldiers
are brindan, make them go blessed day by day. Righteousness with heart they carry, wisdom, power, and light their